I think it's meant to protect all our populations, but it's quite true that all the evidence we have is that young people are at little or no risk from this particular ailment, but there are populations that are older people, particularly with pre-existing conditions, respiratory problems, diabetes, and so forth. So there is the risk we can contribute to jeopardizing them. And then there's the more general public interest or public health responsibility that I think it became clear to us and other schools that we have. We're an unusual environment with tens of thousands of people in very close proximity. And if we're not very careful, we could contribute to spreading it in society, even if we didn't have people in real jeopardy on our own campus. So all those things went into the decision.
And that kind of leads me into a pre-prepared question that I had, and that was, why does it make sense to allow students to leave campus for spring break and then come back to the community? Doesn't that potentially increase the risk?
Well, there's no easy answer. In the first place, we're not in a position to incarcerate people and tell them they can't go somewhere else. There are risks having people in very, very close proximity, just as there are if they travel elsewhere and come back. So I'm unaware of any school which has taken the course of trying to forbid people from leaving, but that was not an option that we seriously considered.
In considering all of these things, who was involved in making yesterday's decision? Who was consulted?
We consulted pretty widely. Obviously, the entire leadership team, all the provost people, the student life people, the dean of students, then our entire safety team. You know, we have at this table, over the course of time, I've had our people run exercises, so-called tabletop exercises, on a whole host of possible problems, everything from tornadoes and other natural disasters to criminal acts that could happen on the campus. So obviously, or not surprisingly, an outbreak of some sort of medical problem was one of those. And so we had the benefit of having thought about this a lot in advance. But then the group that does that, the head of public safety, the head of PUSH, we have also, happily, some real experts on this campus, and I talked to them. Richard Kuhn in our biology department is known worldwide. He and the late Michael Rossman characterized the Zika virus. You may remember this, a previous scare that we had. And so we have faculty who are very knowledgeable about virology and working on this problem right now, and we contacted them too.
Is a decision that's made at Ohio State or Indiana University have any bearing on what happens here?
It does. Number one, we talked to colleagues all over the country and tried to learn from many thing they had done or thought about. And then secondly, I think obviously if others are taking actions and we were to be less careful than they were, people might question that in the event that a real problem or a larger problem developed. So sure, in all honesty, we did pay close attention to what others were doing. Didn't mean we felt obliged to imitate them, and of course we chose a slightly different course than many.
So could you talk a little bit more about that? I think right now we're the only university that doesn't have a definite set ending date for starting in-person classes again. So could you talk?
Well, actually, I'm not sure that's the case, but and this letter makes some mention of it. You know, we want to get back to full and in-person education for every student as soon as it's medically and scientifically justifiable and defensible. And so I wasn't prepared to throw in the towel on the whole semester. I think some schools have done that. I think we want to simply watch and monitor this. It may not be wise to resume in-person teaching. But I don't want to give up the possibility of that, because that's the business we're in. I make the point in this letter, Purdue has been, we've invested a lot of effort and money in so-called active learning, which is arguably puts an even higher premium on the exchange between teacher and learner. And so it was with reluctance that we decided it was the right thing to do to suspend in-person instruction. But as soon as we're able to get back to it, I would like to do that. You know, safety first, but as soon as we are able, we want to get back to it.
And that is indefinite. I mean, there was some.
It is indefinite, yeah, because I don't know and nobody knows the trajectory this will take. It could become very severe. It could show more lethality than it has so far, or, as has happened with many previous viruses, it could crest and become a more manageable situation. And so I don't pretend to know, and I don't think even the experts do.
This is kind of a touchy-feely question, and you're not that kind of a touchy-feely guy.
Hey!
The buck stops with you, right? And
Yeah.
This is kind of disruptive in terms of commencement and events on campus, the Tyler Trent, the 5K.
Yeah, Springfest.
What does that feel like
Yeah.
in your office, in your
Yeah.
position?
Well, it's heartbreaking in some ways. I sat this morning at this table with people who work all year to put on Purdue commencements, and almost nobody does what we do. I'm so proud of it. Every student is individually honored. There's almost no school our size that still does that. And it's a huge undertaking. And to tell these people there's real doubt that we can do that, we better be thinking about alternatives, I felt badly for them, and of course for the students who might not get the full experience if the rules don't change between now and then. So, but look, let's keep some perspective about this. From anything we've seen so far, this thing could be much, much worse. It has not yet shown itself to be an especially lethal virus. And so, yes, it's disruptive, but it's possible to imagine things that could be much worse. And let's hope that nothing changes in a big way, and we're not dealing with a serious threat to the health of our students or the rest of the community. Now, that would be something that I'd feel even worse about.
And so, I know hypothetical questions aren't really the best, but like if and when that day comes, full saying, okay, it's manageable, it's all right to come back to campus, what would that process look like, and how much time would be given to students to come back, you know,
Alex, I wish I could tell you exactly. I mean, I'm going to violate the rule against hypothetical questions. I was trained a long time ago to don't answer those, but it's a fair question. I mean, well, I think it would have to have a voluntary character to it. We've tried to we're going to do the very best we can in this interim period. And as the letter says, bear with, because we're not pretending that this is every bit as good as the kind of instruction that happens every day at Purdue. But if we should be able to get back to a regular business before the end of this semester, I think we'd have to leave room for students or their families who wanted to be more careful even than that. But we'll be very careful before we'd ever come to such a decision.
So has the call not yet been made about commencement ceremonies?
No, I didn't want to make it impulsively. But it's clearly time to start planning for other eventualities. I mean, think about it. 2 months or less from now, the way we do it is a special problem. 6,000 people, 6 times in 3 days in the same enclosed facility. If we were one of those, that big majority of large schools who did a mass commencement in an open-air facility, everybody stand up at once, we'd probably have a little less to worry about. That might be more manageable. But the way we do it, again, which I'm so proud of, even though it's a huge undertaking, I think creates a special challenge for us.
Does the university have plans at the moment for how you guys are going to reevaluate, come after spring break or whenever?
Well, Lisa, we'll start as always by looking at the science and the data and listening to the experts. This is Purdue. We try to make decisions that way, and we will do that with an absolute bias on the side of caution. We'll err on the side of caution, but we will also be looking for the opportunity to get back to the business of providing the best education that we possibly can. And that standard does involve the interaction of faculty and students. And I haven't even mentioned here the kind of study that's so prevalent at Purdue involving laboratories and things like this, which will be even harder to replicate with today's digital tool.
When you met with the actual scientists and
Yeah.
they were talking to you about what they knew or thought they knew about this situation, did that, I don't want to use the word scary, but what was that like? Was that sort of alarming to hear some of the
Actually, the science, to me, is somewhat calming or reassuring. On the one hand, this is a virus which is very likely to spread quickly given its nature. On the other hand, what I was listening for was danger, particularly to young people, since we are such a young population here, or to people of any age or background, and that we haven't seen yet. Not to say we won't, but that clearly is not there, and let's just hope that remains the case. So the goal of the public health people and who are giving guidance and requests to institutions like ours and businesses and others is everyone do what you can to limit the crest to the peak of this so we can get on the downside more quickly. And but I think in terms of the real dangers to health, thank goodness we have not heard that, at least so far. Bigger risks are the disruption in the healthcare system if too many people need at least basic care at the same time. And of course disruption of activities like ours and business and so forth. These are real problems, big ones, and nobody's happy about it. But the thing I was listening for the most attentively was, are any of our young people or any of our staff or faculty at serious medical risk? So far, that seems very, very manageable or very minimal.
Do you know how many Purdue-related people have been tested for the virus?
Been tested? I don't know. A very few, and they were negative. So we're still waiting. It'll happen. The arithmetic says it'll happen one way or another. It'll happen regardless what we do. That there'll be some cases in any place our size, but not so far. And let's just hope if we take the right actions, and other people do too, that there'll be many fewer than there would have been.
I think it was a week ago, I get my days a little mixed up now, but you had told us that I think it was a visiting professor that had self-quarantined.
Yeah, it turned out to be fine.
Do you know if there are any other cases of self-quarantine involving the community?
There may have been a second, and to my knowledge, each of them turned out to be something more benign, a cold, a different kind of virus.
Okay. Did you do any consultation with John Dennis or Rocky Killian when you were going through this?
No, honestly, I didn't. I can't say that none of our people checked with them. I've not talked to either of them recently, but
Okay.
yeah.
Are you at all concerned, I'm wondering, about how students might behave without, a set schedule? College students like to party and that kind of thing.
Well, Lisa, 33,000 plus grad students here. We've got all kinds, but you know, I've always been so proud. I make some reference in this message that as a group and as a whole, I think Purdue students are at the responsible end of the spectrum of people your age, certainly at the academically serious end of the spectrum. And so I have a lot of confidence that people will conduct themselves in a way, first of all, that is smart as to their own health and people around them, and from the standpoint of the community too.
Are you going to be at the Purdue game tomorrow?
No.
Because of this?
No, just because my wife has a
Scheduling.
surgery procedure.
Oh,
in the
I'm
morning.
sorry.
No, it's not a big, don't think it's a big
Would,
thing.
but I guess the larger question is,
Mhm.
would you go if that was an option for you, or are you kind of in a personal way staying away from large gatherings?
Yeah, well, I went to the game last weekend, and this poses a special problem. I will say this, among the other dozens of people I've been visiting with, of course, are our athletic folks. If there's one small good break we got with the calendar, our indoor sports schedule has just ended, essentially everything. So men's and women's basketball, indoor track, swimming, volleyball, they've all wound up their seasons, at least their seasons in facilities that we're responsible for. The one possible exception is if there's an NIT bid, and we just haven't, we don't know what we do, but I will tell you that I raised the question, we might play without fans.
They're doing that in Europe.
Yeah, well, they did it in Division III or something like that. At least a place or two. So once again, we'll listen to others, and we won't just robotically imitate others. But back to your previous question, we're certainly going to consult with everybody we can, see if they make a decision like that. Okay, what did you know? What can you tell us about how you came to that decision?
But what I'm hearing you say is this is not altering your behavior.
Well, I'm trying to model good behavior. I hope I do most of the time anyway, but I will tell you that it's hard to, after a lifetime shaking hands, and instructing young people, give a good grip and all that, it's sort of hard to adjust to that. But I've been catching myself, almost all the time.
Okay, final question for me anyways. Some things are still on the bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Commencement,
Yeah.
spring break probably, or spring fest.
Spring Fest has been canceled.
That has been canceled.
Yeah, that's
What are the cancellations?
well, you better talk to Julie and the folks, because I just found, Spring Fest, for example, is been supervised by the College of Agriculture, so it was their call. They obviously knew our overall posture, but I didn't even know about that one until a couple hours ago.
The same weekend as Grand Prix, right?
And I know the Grand Prix is being re-examined also.
So that's on the bubble.
Yeah. And one question I've heard differing viewpoints on is whether outdoors is sufficiently different or safer. There's clearly a lot of people who believe that's what the data say, but I'm not certain that that's universally the view.
I'm not sure how to pose this question, so I'm going to throw it out there and massage it.
Don't worry, I probably won't be sure how to answer it either.
There's a significant amount of people who believe that this is sort of media-driven and hyped up, et cetera, et cetera. How do you square the decision to make the decision that you made yesterday? I guess it's hard for me to separate that from sort of maybe a political viewpoint, but it's certainly a media-driven.
Well, I do think, and it's in the nature of your business, especially these days, to leap on stories like this and to accent the most exciting, possibly alarming aspects of them. But it's a real phenomenon, and so when I look past the media and the coverage, and look, as we've tried to the real experts, to the people whose everyday job is not media but public health and so forth, they all believe it should be taken seriously, and that steps like those we are taking are important. And so have we taken exactly the right ones, or are there others we could have taken? I'm sure we don't have the perfect combination, but should we have been aggressive about this? I'm convinced that the evidence and the wisest and most knowledgeable people would say yes, and that would be the case if there'd never been the first story written. Does that come close? I think that's the best I can do.
It's kind of a woolly sort of a question.
Yeah. No, it's a really good one, but I guess what I'm saying is that, sure, there's been some hyperbole, and I think there's been here and there some probably people led to conclusions that the real data so far doesn't warrant. But if you can discount for all that, there are very serious people whose lives have been given to medicine and science and the protection of public health, all believe that this needed to be addressed in extraordinary ways, that we couldn't just ride it out as we have many other viral epidemics.
President Daniels, probably my last question. For example, one of my courses that I take very dearly is an Italian conversation course, where you just talk, no homework. It's very lovely. It's pure Italian. And I have plenty of friends and plenty of people in our office who do dance classes, pottery, that sort of thing. So you mentioned in your letter that students will need to be kind of caring and aware that some substitutes are going to be harder than others. But for those students who have these classes, especially seniors who they have senior design, communicating with people communicating with like communities in like Peru to clean water without those kinds of problems and projects that are just so inherently physical. What do you tell those students? What are the thought processes behind, you might not be able to finish your airplane in over the next 2 weeks. How does that work?
Best I can say is talk to the relevant faculty member. There are going to be dozens of such cases. We know this, and that we're all going to have to do the best we can. There's no one policy or rule we can imagine that would cover all of them. I think if they're all approached, first of all, with all the behavioral guidelines in mind, to guard as best we can against any possible transmission. And then secondly, as I request in the letter, in a sense of patience and cooperation, let's work these things out as best we can. We'll get through this. And one thing about it's important, really important about your question, we are very committed to each student being able to keep progressing at whatever rate they had set for themselves, despite the improvising we're going to all have to do.